And welcome to another edition of the Hank Unplugged podcast. We are committed to bringing the most interesting, informative, inspirational people on the planet directly to your earbuds. And today, I have a guest that I have been looking forward to interview for a long time. I read both her books and was deeply impacted by the first book, which really tells the story of how Yeonmi Park escapes from North Korea via China. Then she ends up going through the Gobi Desert to Mongolia, from Mongolia to North Korea, from North Korea to America. It's a fascinating story. And she has two poignant purposes in her life. The first poignant purpose is that she wants people to know that North Korea is the world's largest concentration camp. As a human rights activist, she wants people to understand just how terrifying the situation in North Korea, facilitated by China, really is. And secondly, she wants us to understand how fragile our freedom in America is. And she does the most wonderful job in her book, In Order to Live, A North Korea Girl's Journey to Freedom, of telling her escape from North Korea, how she got to America. And in the book, While Time Remains, she talks about our freedoms, which are so fragile, so easy to be lost. And as I read this book, I thought about our Christian Research Journal, because our latest edition is titled The War on Western Civilization, Everything You Need to Know About the Cult of Wokeism. And Yeonmi Park really talks about wokeism in this book as well. So the two books, and they are absolute must-reads, both books. You can get them through the Ministry of the Christian Research Institute. You can go online at equip.org, or simply write me at Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. So again, check out those books on our website at equip.org. We don't charge you for them. For your support of the ministry, happy to send you a copy of either one of those books. But if you've read one, you'll read the other. This book, this title of this book, While Time Remains, Yeonmi, really reminds me of what happened under the Babylonian captivity with the Jews in the 6th century, where Joel likens the invading forces to an army of locusts, and he warns the people of God to turn back to the principles and the precepts of Yahweh while time remains. And of course, they didn't. They ended up in exile. The temple was destroyed, and so forth. So a poignant title, terrific books. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I'm so honored to be here.
You know, you say so many things that are memorable in your books. The first thing that you say is that you're grateful for two things. You're grateful that you were born in North Korea, and you're grateful that you escaped North Korea. Elaborate.
I think so I came to New York. When I came to America, I was trying to study at Columbia University and writing my first book that you were talking about. And I couldn't really believe that how many people were suffering in the land of free and in the land of abundance. Almost 75% of my friends were going to see therapists because they could not handle daily life in freedom. And I was truly shocked. They were asking me to go see a therapist. And I was like, what do you mean that I need to go talk about how hard it was to survive? It was not a concept for me. And that's when I truly realized, without seeing the darkness, you cannot really truly appreciate the light. You can never appreciate freedom the way I could, because I was experiencing such a oppression that I think a lot of people are hard to imagine. And that's when I, for the first time, realized actually what I went through was a part of blessing. It was a greater plan that God made for me. So I could have that perspective and be grateful and really be happy even being in America right now.
You've told this story many times, but give people some kind of sense of what it is like to live in North Korea, not 50 years ago, but even right at this moment.
So I often say that living in North Korea in a way is something people cannot really relate to anymore because it became almost a different planet. People in North Korea have no concept of internet. They don't even have 24 hours electricity. We don't even have actually my son asking me, I have a son and he asked me like, did you have a bed in North Korea? I was like, of course not. Did you have a shower in North Korea? Of course not. Like, he's like, then what did you have? Right? Literally everything that we have here, the things that we take really for granted. North Korean people have no concept that they even exist. I never even knew that milk was coming from cow. I never had a milk in my life. There's no formula. If though you have a child as a mother, and because of malnutrition, women don't make breast milk, then children die. And that's a norm in our country. And I think that kind of life that North Korean people are living is in a way in the dark ages. That is a norm there. And I think that's why it's very hard for the Westerners to imagine life in the darkness.
Is it accurate to talk about North Korea as the world's largest concentration camp?
Totally. I mean, now after Kim Jong-un, the latest Kim that came into power, even for the last 10 years, with the aid from Chinese Communist Party, they've been exporting all this technology, the surveillance technology to facial recognition and to put on the border. They built double wire fences with the electricity running. They buried the landmines on their entire border with the machine guns, with the guards standing. The entire nation is scared. And people have no other information coming in. There's one channel on TV that was government controlled. There's no other newspaper. So it is the largest concentration camp the humanity has ever seen.
You know, North Korea actually has a history that's very, very interesting. I was born in 1950, and the Civil War in North Korea broke out in 1950, a civil war that lasted about 3 years. And then you have, along the 38th parallel, you have a line of demarcation between North and South. You have the South Korean peninsula becoming one of the most prosperous areas of the world, number one academically worldwide. If you look at pro golf, I love golf. Some of the greatest golfers come out of Korea, particularly on the LPGA tour. So an incredible prosperity, great learning, an incredible culture really goes from a military dictatorship to this incredible culture contrasted now with North Korea. But how does this happen where you have a prosperous South Korea and an absolutely decimated in terms of the people North Korea?
Yeah, I think it's a great example when we see even nighttime, we see the satellite pictures of North Korea and South Korea. You see the light in South Korea, and then North Korea is the black hole, complete darkness, because there's no electricity in there. And this is, I think, perfect testament to see why political system matters. North Korea, South Koreans were same people for almost 5,000 years. Same genetics, same culture, same language. We ate same kimchi and all of the same food. And then we chose two different political systems. One chose collectives, communism and socialism. One chose free market, the American system of government with checks and balances and free democracy. With the two political systems, one country became one of the poorest nations in the whole world. And people are dying massively from starvation. They cannot even have basic medicine. And one country, that is South Korea, became the country of K-pop. I mean, the artists, the electronics, Samsung, LG, Hyundai, they make cars. They make so many great products for the humanity. And I think this is where it really comes down to what political system that we choose determines our future. In a way, it's not about genetics. It's not about culture. It's really not about any of that. If this political system enables individuals to fulfill their potential. And that is what we're seeing in South Korea. And that's how they became like 10 largest economies in the world as a nation with a tiny, tiny country. South Korea as a whole is not even every state in America is bigger than South Korea. That's how tiny it is and became the 10 largest economy in the whole world. So it's that something why we need to choose free democracy, why we choose to have capitalism and democracy. And that's how humans can really fulfill their dreams.
You tell a gripping story of having your appendix removed in North Korea. And I think in telling that story or retelling it on this podcast, I think people will get some kind of an idea of what it's like to be in a hospital. We take hospital services for granted. Certainly where I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and throughout the United States, we take so much for granted. But you have your appendix removed and you start to see the total degradation of a system where medicine actually becomes harmful to a person because the needles are reused, because the dead bodies are stacked up like cordwood. Give us some kind of a glimpse into what it was like for you personally to have what we would think of as a simple operation.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example where people to get see in reality what this promise does to people. So in America now, I see this trend too. So many people saying education is a human right. We should get a free education, right? Free higher education. Healthcare is a human right. We should get a free healthcare. And that exact promise was promised to North Korean people by Kim Il-sung in North Korea. The regime came in the 50s and promised people, we're going to make the housing free. We're going to make the education free. We're going to make the healthcare free. But in that free healthcare, nothing works. And it does so much harm to the Northern people. So when I went to, I got a huge bad stomach ache in 2007 when I was 13 years old. My mother took me to hospital. And then in the hospital, they don't have like CT scans or X-ray machines or anything. Just doctor whoops your belly. And he was thinking, you might have like appendicitis. It might burst. We might have to operate on you. And then this doctor will not do anything if we don't bribe the doctor. So first, it's not free. You have to bribe a doctor. Then they don't have anything like penicillin or like any cutlery. So my mother had to borrow money and go to black market, buy this like medicine and gauze and things from the black market. And then once doctor opened my stomach without really working anesthesia, and he realized I just had a malnutrition and infection. I didn't have appendicitis. And they still removed it and then closed me back. But people in North Korea don't die from cancer. They literally die from fever, infection, like this mistreatment, because doctors in hospital use one needle to inject every patient. And they can't afford to buy this new gauze. So they will sometimes cook it and try to kill the germs, and sometimes it doesn't work. So this is like what free healthcare looks like in reality. It's not that all that amazing, promising, what Americans are envisioning to be. That's what in reality how it works.
Tell us about Juche.
So this is really going back to what I just talked about, why this doctor needed a bribery. So Juche is where the idea that North Korea made up in the middle of the socialism. So they began as a communist party, and then, okay, we are going to choose a socialism. Then they later said, okay, we need to come up with something else. And that was a North Korean style of socialism. So until like Soviet Union collapses, Soviet Union was heavily, heavily subsidizing North Korea's economy. And then when Soviet Union stopped supporting North Korea, the regime just ran out of all the resources. So they could not tell people anymore that the state gonna take care of you, right? Initially they said, state is gonna give you free housing, free healthcare, free education, free of everything, eliminate all the inequalities, make the society totally equitable. But then they could not keep their promise. So they said, okay, now we're on your own. We are not going to take care of you, but you cannot be trading in the black market, or you cannot have any private sector. You cannot own any private property. So doctors had to work for the government for free, but they could not get salary. So the only place they can get a food to survive themselves was getting bribery. So it forced everybody in North Korea to become corrupt. So children had to go to school. Officially, it's a free education, but teachers are dying from starvation. School cannot run. Nothing was supplied by government. So they would hit students, torture students to go home and bring money and bring supplies to school to teachers. So if you don't bring bribery to school, your children get abused and get beaten at school. So it really made everybody in society, the guards had to rape these women because they have all the authority. The governments cannot intervene. So Juche is something called self-reliance. It meant that we are on our own and we could not do something called the free market and engaging in a free trade.